Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We'll give it just a couple more seconds as folks make it to this webinar. Seeing the numbers tick up. Give it just another second and we'll get started. This webinar is being recorded. I'm saying this to make sure my team is hitting record at the right time, and will live on our website along with the other resources related to what we're talking about. Actually, Anna, while I'm talking, if you want to just have it perfect. That way people can see our faces slightly larger for a minute. So welcome everyone. I'm Anne McBride. I'm the Vice President of Impact at the James Beard Foundation. I oversee our research, training, and advocacy. And I've had the pleasure to work with the University of Michigan's Executive MBA program for 2 cycles now. And Anna Magnuson on my team has been leading this work. You are also looking on screen. Anna will introduce everyone, but you're also looking at Anouska Biswas, who is the Director of Finance at the Foundation, and Emily Solomon, who is our advocacy coordinator. So just to give you a little bit of context for what this tool that is being released today is. Our first project was the University of Michigan's Executive MBA program 2 years ago was around how do we increase the profit margins of our industry from the standard 3 to 5%, which these days is even lower than that, to 15%. And so a team took that on to look at what that would look like and what's possible. And the results, to be honest, were not very optimistic around it. They did surveys and interviews with about 50 chefs, and several of the chefs the majority were nowhere close to 15%, and some were actually even in the negative numbers. And out of that project, what surfaced is that controlling costs was really an enormous issue for business owners. No matter how long folks had been in business, what their financial literacy level was, etc., it was really, really challenging to control cost. So last year, the proposal we sent to the course was, how do we rethink the business model of restaurant, period, to make it easier to control cost and to increase profit margin, or at minimum to really be able to control what the costs are. And so an incredible team of the Executive MBA program, represented on this screen by Mathew and Isabelle Howes, came up with this incredible tool to really be helping you all control your costs in a way that does not require buying a new software, that does not require subscription, that does not require getting familiar with a whole new piece of technology, because that was another obstacle, right? Like not just the cost of new technology you would need to purchase to be able to control your costs, but who's learning it? Is that another hat you're putting on next to your chief marketing officer and your chief walk-in fixer and all these kind of things? So making it something that is accessible and easy was really critical to this project. And we're so grateful for the team to have really come up with something that anyone can use without additional training. And that is something that members of your team can also be using. So they are going to go much more in depth as to what the tool actually does. But this is the top level thinking of why JBF is releasing this today, really with the idea of continuing to take things off your plate and making it easier for you to run your restaurants, to work in your restaurants, and to control your costs in an environment that is becoming ever more challenging and ever more volatile also. Being able to adjust your costs and have an immediate picture with so much uncertainty around tariffs, for example, will become more critical than ever. So I'm going to pass it on to Anna on my team to take us through what we're going to be doing today.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to walk us through a few slides before I pass it over to our lovely guests. So this is just a session overview, what we'll be discussing today. I'm gonna go over a bit of an introduction to ABCs of accounting. We'll have an overview of the curriculum that has been created. We will then jump to the tool that Anne has just discussed, and then we will have some time for Q&A. So just be sure to drop those in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring that for the end of the session. So these are the resources that are available on our website now on jamesbeard.org. So we have the curriculum that you'll see part of today for this PowerPoint presentation. We have the ABCOT tool that also comes with an overview document for really to walk folks through its usage. And we will be continuing these live sessions monthly. So all of those dates are on our website, so you can pre-register now through December these office hour style sessions. So you can continue to come to them. You can come to one, you can come to all six. And then lastly, we created a WhatsApp group for peer-to-peer support, just to be able to connect with other folks using these resources for help for this and that. And we'll be monitoring that chat as well and assisting as we can. So, but really for that peer-to-peer kind of connection to garner for you all. So right. So just Isabelle, I'm going to pass to in a few minutes, but just to give kind of a high level of what is activity-based costing as a two-stage allocation process that relies on assessing and allocating the consumption of indirect costs and products of one dish. So as Anne kind of touched on, these really amazing resources to really understand, to be able to really optimize your business and understanding both direct and indirectly being able to price your dishes as we really face these harsh and unrelenting rising costs of this industry. So here are some of the benefits of using the ABC methodology, providing the most accurate product costs, being able to make really strategic decisions about your business, being able to understand what is inefficient, what activities are inefficient, and highlighting where you can make these changes in order to really optimize your business practices. And this methodology, this tool can also be used in your pro formas and already existing tools that you use to run your business. And here are the following sessions that I mentioned that you can sign up for. Like I said, all these Zoom link registrations are already on our website. The ABCs of accounting that is under our resource page. And so we'll see more at the end of that for more links and being able to stay in touch with us as well. And I am going to stop share quickly. I'm about to pass to Isabelle Howes, who is on the Ross Executive MBA team that we worked with in the fall that created all of these resources for us. And so I am just going to share very excitingly the curriculum. And Isabelle is going to give us an overview. So Isabelle, if you want to quickly say hi or introduce yourself, and I'll bring these slides up.
Yeah, happy to. So it's really nice to be with everyone today. I'll give a pretty high level overview of what the curriculum is so that you understand it a little bit as you start to flip through it on your own. And then I'll just walk through the principles of what activity-based costing is to kind of give you a primer before you dive into those materials yourself. So the vision of the curriculum was to really provide a tangible plug and play that would complement the broader business acumen program that James Beard is running, and address the challenge that you're facing in the industry in terms of profitability. You'll see that the curriculum is comprised of a couple of different sections. You've got key terms, learning objective, lesson plans, etc. So here you'll see lessons 1 and onward. But the real goal of the entire curriculum was to focus on addressing 5 key questions, who, why, when, how, and what. So, for the who, we know that time is money for you chef owners. We wanted to ensure that the program provides sufficient return on investment for those of you that invest your time in going through it. And so we really tried to identify, the industries and restaurants that would benefit most from ABC. For the why, we wanted to ensure the curriculum would address why ABC is beneficial to the industry in particular. So to this end, the curriculum really focuses on demonstrating how ABC provides more accurate total cost data and then can therefore be used for strategic decision making within each of your individual restaurants and businesses. Additionally, we highlight how ABC can be used in other business activities which Anna just touched upon. For the when, we used a lot of academic research to complement this. ABC is a really good fit when there's high levels of competition, high levels of indirect and overhead costs that are consumed to produce your products, and high levels of diversity in the final products, or in this case, in your menu. And so a lot of that makes it really perfect for independently owned restaurants. For the how, we really wanted to take you chef owners through the concept of ABC, how to do it, understand kind of the background math to it, and then that brings us to the what, which is the lovely activity-based costing optimization tool that my colleague Matt and Anouska will walk through later. So just to kind of give you a primer, and I think, and Anna's got the slides up for lesson 1 on the principles. I'll take a quick moment to introduce you to the principle and the concept of what activity-based costing is. So we like to call it ABC because we love acronyms in the business world. And from an academic perspective, the technical definition of ABC is an accounting method where indirect overhead costs are allocated at a specified rate to accurately reflect how much of these indirect costs is needed to produce a final product. So definitely a mouthful. And what does that mean in a restaurant? So in the restaurant industry, ABC can really help you understand the amount of indirect costs that are consumed to make one dish or one product. So paired with the easily traceable direct costs like your material and your labor, ABC can help determine the total cost of making each dish on your menu. So in comparison, traditional costing methods often look at how many dishes are sold, how many hours the staff works, and the total indirect overhead costs, and then spread that total indirect overhead costs at a flat rate across all your products. But the problem there is that that approach can often lead to overcosting for some products and undercosting for others. So the end goal of ABC is to provide a concrete understanding of the true cost of a dish so that you can control your costs, adjust menu prices accordingly, and increase that profitability, per Anne's opening comments. A lot of times this is something that you do intuitively in your head, given all of your experience in the industry. So the ABC method and concepts that you'll learn throughout the curriculum really just provide that math to explain what you're already probably intuitively doing, and give you a more concrete way to control your costs going forward. So I think the easiest way to understand the principles and the concept of ABC is through an example, which is what Anna has up here. So let's take a bakery, for example. Before we dive into this, I do want to encourage you to shift the way and your approach about thinking about costing, especially when you're doing it for an activity-based costing approach. So now I want you to think from the bottom up. Let the dishes, or the cost objects as you'll see them referred to throughout the curriculum, determine what activities are done, and then let those activities determine what resources are consumed, and then let those resources determine which indirect costs are consumed. So kind of that bottom-up approach that you'll see going forward. So back to the bakery. Let's assume that it makes 3 goods: cake, bread, cookies. Those are what we call your cost objects. To make your 3 cost objects, the cake, bread, and cookies, we need to go up a level, and let's assume that the baker conducts 6 activities to make those 3 goods. They order ingredients, they mix and prepare 3 doughs, they bake the 3 doughs, and let's include the process of loading and unloading the ovens, cooling the goods. Then they decorate the goods, then they slice and package the goods, and then they sell the baked goods to generate revenue. So those are kind of your 6 activities. To keep things simple, we can probably bucket those 6 activities into 3. You've got your mixing or your prepping, you got your baking, and you've got your selling. And those 3 activities are all going to consume a different percentage of your bakery's resources, of your indirect costs. They're going to consume wages from the baker, they're going to consume rent from the bakery, and they're going to consume utilities to fire the ovens, run the mixers, keep the lights on, etc. Now that we know what our cost objects are, the cakes, the bread, the cookies, and we now know what we call our activity pools, which is the mixing, the baking, and the selling. We also know what the resources are that are being consumed. Those are your indirect overhead costs, the wages, the rent, the utilities. The last step that you'll need to do to conduct ABC is to determine your activity rates. So the easiest way to think about your activity rates is you're using your knowledge of how a bakery is run, how each good is baked, to allocate a percentage of the resource that is consumed, so that wage, that rent, that utility, that indirect cost, to each activity. So, for example, if a loaf of bread bakes for longer than a cookie, it's consuming more of the cost of your utilities because it's in the oven longer. If a cake takes longer to decorate than a loaf of bread, it consumed more wages from the baker because the baker is spending more time decorating the cake than it is probably decorating a loaf of bread. So you find your activity rates by taking a cost driver, say the total number of products made per day, and dividing the total cost of the activity by that cost driver. So once you have all of these lovely numbers that you can see kind of laid out here on the slide, and have all of this mapped out for your 3 products, you can then easily calculate the total indirect cost that is consumed for each product your bakery is making. You then add that to the total traceable direct cost for the product, so your raw ingredient bill, etc. And then that'll give you the total true cost to make that cake, that loaf of bread, and that cookie. Now, this is a whole lot of math that goes into this. So our team took it one step further and really sought to simplify the mathematics through the ABCOT tool that we're going to introduce you to today. And that really is supposed to streamline this and make this a lot simpler for you. But we wanted to give you the tools also to understand the concept behind this lovely, lovely tool that Matt is going to walk you through. So that's the objective here of the curriculum and also just kind of the first principles I've walked you through today. So maybe with that, I think I will hand it over to Anouska, who I think is going to introduce the tool, and then over to our brainchild, Matt.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to see such high participation rates in our first session, and we hope to see you in the subsequent ones as well. I'm Anouska Biswas. I'm the Director of Finance at the James Beard Foundation. I've spent the last probably 26 years or so in hospitality, food and beverage, opening restaurants, hotels, trying to help manage costs internally and build strong financial infrastructure so that our restaurants and hotels can take things to the next level. I've also been on the other side of the coin by implementing purchasing softwares across different restaurants. And I know how expensive, time-consuming, and frustrating it can be when you're trying to run your daily business. And if not set up correctly, which there's such a large bit of labor to set up correct purchasing systems, it just causes more frustration and expense. And then with turnover within the industry, you just lose a lot of information. So the members of the executive MBA team at Ross, the University of Michigan, have created this wonderful platform that I'm super excited about to work with you guys on in the next couple of months to help you manage your costs. And as we walk through the model today, if you have any questions, I know it's the first time you're going to be seeing it, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. We're going to compile all the questions as well into a frequently asked question document that can help guide you in these subsequent office hours. And also we wanted to say that these office hours are going to they're going to have multiple purposes. 1, it's to learn the tool. 2, to implement the tool within your business. But 3, it's also a way that we want in further office hours for the restaurant community to get together and crowdsource best practices amongst yourselves. So if you are having trouble with something, bring it to the office hours. See if there's other chefs or restaurant owners that are having the same issues. And this is just a great way to continue to build our community and support each other in our work. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Matthew to walk you through the model. We'll moderate the chat, like I said, and then there'll be frequently asked questions that we're going to be compiling as well. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Anouska. And thank you, Anne and Anna as well for the introductions. I'm super excited to walk you all through the activity-based costing and optimization tool, working with Isabelle and the rest of our team. We were very excited about putting this tool together. And as Isabelle mentioned, based on the theory, it can seem very complicated to go about using or implementing activity-based costing. So we've tried to simplify that a lot through this activity-based costing tool, which I will take you all through now. All right. So there are a number of tabs in this tool. It's an Excel-based tool. Like Anne mentioned, our goal was to try and make something simple so that there isn't an extremely large learning curve. Everything in this dashboard is customizable across all of the tabs that you will see over here. I'll also call out which are the fields that you can actually make changes to. So you could add your own values to those fields. And then we've set up all of the formulas to do the heavy lifting, to do the calculations for you so that you don't have to spend time going through the formulas. You could just look at the output in order to make decisions that best affect your business. So at a very high level, when you need to calculate the cost of your cost object, as Isabelle had called out in the ABC overview, or more simply put, the dish that you want to calculate, there are four broad buckets to consider. One is the food costs, then it's the cost of the equipment used or the pieces of equipment used to put that dish together, cost driver together. Then the activities that go into compiling or creating that cost object, right? And then finally, the indirect costs, which we've captured as the overhead costs. Put all of those together, as you will see over here in this right at the top of the tool. That's how we calculate what is the total cost to produce the cost object or the dish. And then to try and help with calculating profit margins as well, or prices that you could set for this particular cost object, we've put in a couple of options to the right. Now, as we go through this tool, all the cells that you see shaded in yellow, those are the cells where you could go in and make changes. So now looking at the options, for example, there are three that we've specified right now, which is 5%, 10%, and 15%. If you want to change that to, say, 25%, right, at a minimum, a 25% margin, if you change that value where you see the 5% today, that will automatically update the next two values to the right of it in 5% increments. So you could see the price or the cost at 25%, 30%, and 35%, right? So that's a quick overview of what the costs and the potential pricing could look like. Now, I will walk you all through each of the steps to calculate those four buckets that you see up there. So the first step is the food cost. It's something that all of you are extremely familiar with. It was a humbling experience for us to learn just how much goes into trying to calculate the food costs. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to match this tool as closely to the inventory management that you would typically see at your restaurants. What we've tried to do is we've built this tool in a way that we will take all of the inventory that you have today and boil it down, or rather break it down into a single consistent unit across all of those ingredients, which is the cost per gram. And then accordingly, you can then decide how many grams in terms of each of the ingredients you would need for your particular recipe. So step one over here, when you're calculating food costs, this little table over here can take up to 30 ingredients. In addition to those 30 ingredients, there are a couple of things that you can specify. So one, the ingredients themselves. You will notice some text within the parentheses over here, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And then also specify the amount that you use for each of those ingredients. What that would do is it will automatically calculate the cost, again, based on the inputs that you've provided, to show you the per ingredient cost based on the quantity of that ingredient that you have used for this particular recipe. And then if you could just scroll up a little bit, the summation of all of those costs is reflected in that box that you see over there under step one for food costs. Now, going a little bit into the making of the sausage, if you click on the second tab called the food inventory tab in this document, this is where you would start inputting all of your ingredients. Now, there are a couple of columns. I'll quickly walk through those. The first column is a broad grouping to try and help organize the ingredients into broad sections. So you'd have condiments, dairy, you've got protein and vegetables, for example. You can organize your ingredients accordingly. Then, if I jump to column 3, this is where you input the individual ingredients themselves. Column D is where you put in the wholesale prices. Column E is the quantity that you have purchased. And then column F is the unit of that particular ingredient the quantity unit that you've purchased for that particular ingredient. Now, all of this is important because this is typically how we've tried to replicate the wholesale prices that you pay for these ingredients. And these are critical inputs to help break them down into that single consistent conversion, which is the cost per gram or the cost per milliliter, for example, if your recipe so called that. Your inputs in these columns will then help us break it down. And that's what you would see in the subsequent columns from G through L. Now, you will see 2 additional columns highlighted over here, columns H and columns J. Column H is where you can specify how much of that particular ingredient you use in your recipe. Again, like I mentioned earlier, all of this fully customizable. Those cells in yellow is where you get to actually get your magic to shine through by indicating, you can indicate how much you use of each ingredient. And then column J would be a text-based description of what that quantity would represent. Right? Now, if we could go back to the first tab, the ABCOT tab. Now, if you take a look at the ingredient, what you will see in that first example is pepper jack cheese, 1 slice times 19 grams. This is how we calculated this entire name label, or this is how we've compiled this name label. So not only can you see the ingredient that you've used, you could see how you've calculated the portion sizes. So in this case, for the pepper jack cheese, it's 1 slice, which weighs approximately 19 grams. And this recipe calls for 2 slices. So therefore, you could choose this ingredient, and then in the amount column, you input the number of slices you would want to use. And then using all of these inputs, the tool will automatically calculate what that total cost is for you based on the wholesale price that you had provided for this particular ingredient. All right. Now, moving on to step 2, what are the ingredients that you would use? Sorry, I take it back. My apologies. What are the pieces of equipment that you would typically use while compiling this cost object or this dish, right? And for that, I'm going to jump to the 4th tab, or rather the 5th tab. Yes, common equipment. So now what we've done over here is we've provided a list of 50 different tools that are most commonly found in kitchens, all the way from your walk-in freezers down to your blenders. In addition to these costs, a couple of columns that can be edited. One is, what is your estimate of the useful life of the product? And the second is, how much did it cost to buy that particular product? The reason why these are 2 critical inputs over here is because of all the calculations that you see in the subsequent columns. This is where we've applied industry averages or industry standards to calculate what the depreciation would look like on each of these pieces of equipment, and using the useful life or the estimated useful life for this equipment as you would have entered it, we then calculate what is the cost per minute to use that particular piece of equipment. Right? Now, if we go back to the tab, and you'll hear me referencing the first tab quite often, just so that I can show you all the linkages between them. Now, what you can do is under the column that you see titled resource, what you can do is start typing in the name of a piece of equipment. If there is a match to the list of equipment that you find in that common equipment tab, it will auto-populate. And then all we need from you is how long do you estimate you would use that piece of equipment when trying to put together a particular cost object. Now, in the case of the walk-in freezer and the fridge, this could include activities like stocking the freezer with the ingredients when you first purchase them. It could include storing them after some initial prep, and then also retrieving the ingredients in order to be able to produce the cost driver. And then, so on and so forth. You could add all of the different pieces of equipment here. Using those inputs, again, taking you back to the useful life of the equipment and the cost to acquire that piece of equipment. Using that cost per minute calculation, we then will call out how much it costs to use that piece of equipment in preparing this particular cost object. The color shading, you'll also notice that under the total cost column for both step 1 and for step 2, there is a color shading. It's organized based on the most expensive part of that step to the least expensive. So looking at the step 2 example here, the most expensive part of step 2 is that walk-in freezer or fridge time. The least expensive is the charbroiler step, where it's used for a minute. I should clarify at this point that we used a very hypothetical example, so this may not be reflective of how you actually use these pieces of equipment in your respective kitchens, but it's a way to try and highlight how you would go about interpreting these values as you see them in each of these tables. Right? All right. With these 2 steps in place, so the food costs as well as the equipment costs, we now move to step 3, where there is there's some magic in here in this step. Now, what we've accounted for, what we're doing in this step is now combining the previous 2 inputs to now also include how much time it takes in order to be able to complete each of the steps required to produce the cost object. There's a lot over here, and I'm going to walk you all through a couple of tabs. The first, right at the top of this table, what we have done is we've included wages across 8 metros in the United States. We've looked at wages across the top 8 cities, which are available to you in that dropdown where you see San Francisco. When you click on that cell, you will be able to see all of those metros listed over there. And this will pull in the wage salary, and I'll explain how that fits into this table in a bit. In addition to the data for each of these metros, you also have the ability to add your own wages in the compensation in the tab I'm going to show you in a bit, the common job positions tab. So you can put in the wages that you pay right now as well, and then the formulas in place will then boil it down to the cost per minute. In addition to selecting the location, you can also specify additional details like the number of working weeks in the year, how many days per week do each of these roles work, and how many hours per day. Our goal here was to try and offer the maximum amount of flexibility to try and estimate and calculate what your per role costs would look like. Right? So now, with that first table set up, your next step would be to list out each of the different activities that go into preparing your cost object. For that, I will go to the third tab that you see there, the activity pools tab. Now over here, what we've tried to do is we've tried to list out all of the activities, and we've broken them down in terms of different groups. So groupings could include stocking, prep, cooking, setting up the bar, anything related to drinks that are served at your restaurant. And we've then further broken them down into specific steps, right? And I believe we have about more than 50 different steps here as well to choose from as a part of this step over here. Now, if we go back to that first tab, what we're going to do is, as a hypothetical example, we're looking at a restaurant that's based in San Francisco that works for 50 weeks in a year, 7 days a week, and runs for a minimum of 12 hours per day. They follow a number of steps over here. So it's about 8 steps to put together this particular cost object all the way from stocking through finishing. What I would do over here is first I would select each of the different activities that go into putting this cost object together, specify the number of minutes, the estimated number of minutes it takes to complete that particular activity, and then the number of portions. Now, this step, I do want to call attention to this particular step. Based on feedback that we got while we were developing this tool, we realized we needed to include the number of portions as well, because on its own, each of these steps are not equal, because something like stocking dry ingredients, you would be stocking ingredients for all of the produce that you would need to use for a number of portions. So that's why you would see in this case, we've got 2,000 portions listed for the stocking of ingredients. However, if you look at the cooking and grilling step, only one portion is listed over here, because for that particular cost object that you would put together, the cooking and grilling step would include just one object. Again, all of this is customizable. If this isn't true for your restaurant, you can always increase the number of portions as well. Say you're creating 6 portions at the same time, that would be the column, that would be the cell to go in and make those changes. Once you specify the number of portions, you then have to identify who is responsible for that particular step. In order to figure out, in order to pull from the pre-populated list of values, let me direct your attention to the 4th tab in the tool, which is the Common Job Positions tab. Now, in that tab, we've listed out about 13 roles. This is also where you get to specify your, under the custom annual column that you see in column D. This is where you could specify the wages that you pay for each of these roles. You also then get to see the comparative rates for those same roles across each of those metros. Now, in terms of the source, we've pulled this information from salary.com. Column N, right at the end of the spreadsheet, has links to the same sources if you would like to go in and take a look at the same details and where we've pulled our information from, right? Now, with this setup in place, I'm going to go back to that first tab. All right. So now this is where, with this information that you specified and using the information in the Common Job Positions tab, we calculate what is the cost per minute to complete that activity with the selected role. And the total cost column that you see over there at the end of the table is the sum of all of these different inputs. Now, again, like I mentioned for step 1 and 2, the color coding over here will help you quickly identify what is your most expensive step in this process to your least expensive step. Now, this is also where, in software terms, there's something in here. So we've put in an Easter egg in here to help explain the optimization piece of this tool as well. Up until now, we've been talking about how to show your costs, how to record your costs, but this is also where there's an optimization Easter egg that we've put in over here. Typically, when you look at a table like this, your eye would be drawn to the most expensive step in this, in this calculation, which in this case is the grilling step. Now, it costs $2.45 to grill, for the grilling step in compiling this particular cost object. Naturally, everyone would gravitate towards that, try to look to see how that could be optimized. Now, one way to optimize that is maybe you don't need the head chef in charge of grilling. Potentially, you could have the line chef instead go in and take care of this particular step. And I wonder if you could click on the head chef cell in the tab itself, a little lower. Yes, right. So if you could click on that, and if you could click on line cook, for example, you'll see that the price has dropped. So instead of the earlier $2.45 amount that was associated with this particular step, by changing the role and pulling in the information for San Francisco, that amount has dropped to $1.04. Now, if I could have that changed back to the head chef, right? All right. So now the Easter egg that we've put in over here is in line 2. Now, this is where the optimization comes into play, where it does cost $2.45 to grill the object. It seems a little unnecessary to spend 98 cents washing and sorting the produce. And when you take a look at this step over here, that's when you realize that at the moment, the head chef is the one who seems to be washing and sorting the produce. What if we could change the person or change the role in charge of this particular step? So again, if I could click on that cell for head chef and change it instead to the prep cook, what you will see is your cost has now gone down by 66%. So instead of paying close to $1 to wash and sort your produce, that cost has now gone down to 35 cents, right? And every time you make a change in any of these tables over here, that calculation will recalculate, and then the coding, the color coding that you see will also adjust automatically to then show you what is your new highest cost and your new lowest cost based on the inputs that have been provided, right? All right. And the last step in this entire process is right at the bottom of this tab, and that's your indirect costs. The good news over here is you don't have to add any values in this tab. We've broken down your indirect costs into these buckets that you see over here. 9 buckets to capture different types of indirect costs across rent, insurance, facilities, marketing, and employee retention activities. No inputs required. This entire table over here is completely driven by formulas. That's the good news. Now, if we go to the indirect costs tab, thank you. This is where you would go in and input your values. I will preface this by saying that, yes, there is going to be some work required at this step to input all of the values relevant to your business or specific to your business and your restaurant. However, the good news here is that this should ideally be a once a year exercise to update these values. Or, once you're done with updating these values for the first time, it would be on an as needed or as required basis to go in and then update only specific values across these 9 different buckets. Now, just to get you all acquainted with the sheet, I won't go through every single table over here. There are 9 separate tables to go through, but just to give you all a high level overview, the first step that is critical is what you see right at the top, which is called step 0. So this is where you can specify what are the total menu items that you offer in your restaurant and how many, an approximate, an estimate, or if you have the specifics, how many items do you sell in total for each of those menu items? Now, again, all of these are approximates. If you don't have the exact numbers, it's okay, because you can put in approximate values. This is an optimization tool as well. So you could use this to try and optimize, or rather try and estimate how much you would spend in indirect costs and how much it would cost to create a cost object at different levels. So if you sell 500 of a particular dish today, in total across your entire menu, you're selling about 20,000 items. What if you sell 100? This table, if you change just that one cell, this table or this tool will recalculate your costs accordingly. What if you sell 1,000? What if you sell 10,000? All you have to do is update that one single cell. The tool will take care of all the calculations for you and recalculate your costs to give you your cost per object on the first tab. Now, after that, the next step, I'll use rent as an example. In the rent step, in the rent calculation, there are 3 steps. The first step is you get to allocate your entire property into how you use that property. What portion or what percentage of your property is used as a part of the kitchen? What percentage of that property is used for dining? And what is used for storage or supplies in this case? That will help in trying to estimate how much you're actually spending on your cost object. Then you get into the details of what it costs to either rent that space. And this is where you specify what your per month rate is. It then extrapolates it up into an annual cost to then break it down into your per day expense. And then finally, what are the associated expenses with running that business? This could be your security deposit, your operating expenses, etc. Now, this table over here, fully customizable again. You can add additional items to your expense list here, right? This is just a start. This is, this is like an example to get you started. But again, all of this can be customized, fine-tuned to your specific scenario. And then finally, as a part of all of these inputs, step 3 will then calculate what your cost is based on your allocations for how you use your particular space. Okay? And this gets fed into the first tab where we calculate your total cost to rent or use your space. Right? And then so on and so forth very quickly. If, as we scroll through this tab, what you will see is we've got inputs for insurance, different types of insurance based on what your business runs. You can specify how many working days, again, you run your business for. Scrolling further down, it also takes into account things such as your utilities, then your permits that may be associated with your business, etc. Now, again, what we've tried to do in this tool is we've tried to provide an exhaustive list based on our research, based on talking with other chefs, based on our academic research. I do want to caveat that not all of the items you see listed in each of these tables may be relevant for your business. So for example, if I can just go back up to the permits and licenses section, the last line item that you see over here, food truck permits. This may not be relevant for you. All you have to do over here is just keep the value, the total permit cost that you see in the next column at 0. That's it. Whatever isn't relevant to your business, if you just zero out that particular line item, this tool will take all of that into account to calculate what your cost is for that particular indirect cost. Right? And with that, if we go back to the first tab, just as a way of closing out on this particular section, this is how each of these costs will be calculated. This is how each of these values that you see over here for each of the 9 buckets are calculated. They all come in from the indirect cost tab, and as relevant for your business, then as you put in those inputs, you will get the output over here in this section. Yep. So with that is the end of the overview of the ABCOT tool. And back to Anouska and Anne.
Looks like Anouska needs another minute, so I'll just thank you, Matt, and Isabelle for giving us the context and then going deep into the details of what this will do. And I'll pass it back to Anouska, who now seems ready.
Sorry, my mute button. I had to find my mute button. Sorry about that. So what I wanted to say is, like we said, we have frequently asked questions that we've kind of compiled to help you begin the process, because I know you've seen it now from the outside, but once you actually look at the tool and you start playing with it. So I would say, Matt, what's good advice, Matthew? What is good advice to tell people, like, once you click on this tool for the first time, what are our best steps? I personally would tell someone, because you do this for each of your menu items, start with your simplest one. Don't go for your most complicated dish. Try something simple so that you familiarize yourself with all of the different components, whether it be labor, equipment, food cost, everything. Start there. I would also suggest, if you can and you have the capacity within your restaurant organizations, pair with someone from your accounting team or purchasing team or administrative team to help you pull the invoices. So like, obviously in your head, my insurance is this, but maybe like have someone help you and guide you to be able to input and keep these figures updated as well. Because again, as chef and restaurant owners, you're running around constantly. It would be nice to have a second backup for you to keep all this information fresh and relevant. Any other advice you would give, Matthew, as they embark on this?
No, I agree with all of that. And if I can add, the only other thing I would say is play with the tool. So try it out. Use recipes that you have, like Anouska mentioned. Start with the simplest one to get familiar with the tool. Use those drop downs because this tool will work best once it is fully customized for your restaurant. And as you play around with the tool, you'll see how just how much of what do you call it? Um, I'm forgetting the word now. My apologies. But how customizable? Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. How customizable the tool is. Yeah.
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 If you want to ask any questions now, top level questions, you can put them in the Q&A portion. Someone in the chat asked if this recording will be available to use as a resource. Yes, absolutely. This will live on the same page on the ABC tool, so you can always refer back to that. And I imagine that people might not have questions quite yet, but will once they start using the tool and will be joining us at our first office hour in a month, in less than a month. Michael is asking, have you piloted this in any operations?
So we haven't piloted it yet. So as a part of building the tool, what we did is we did work with five different restaurant chefs. We worked with five chefs and we used their inputs to try and help build and fine-tune this tool. And those chefs included private chefs, chefs at restaurants. I believe we had an Italian and a pizza restaurant, for example, where we were working with the owner and chef owner of that restaurant, as well as the owner of a food truck and a bulk service, or rather a catering style restaurant as well. So we've tried to use, or we've tried to incorporate inputs from these different types of restaurants into this tool.
And I like your recommendation of only doing or starting with a simple dish. This isn't something like, oh, we expect all of you who are using the tool that by tomorrow afternoon you will have completely costed out your entire menu.
Mm-hmm.
Question from, is there a percentage goal for the various activity expenses for back of the house labor?
Could you help me understand that question a little bit?
So, this would be if you're Elizabeth, feel free to explain that further, but my understanding of the question would be if you're putting, instead of putting the actual number, if you're putting a goal number.
Right.
In my understanding for each position.
Okay, a percentage of time. No, at this point, we don't have a percentage. The tool doesn't support a percentage. It supports the actual time spent on that activity by that person.
So you would calculate the percentage separately.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is the type of question, is there a percentage goal? That's a use for the WhatsApp group, because you can be asking your peers, depending on your market, etc., what percentage goal they might have around this, if it's a target. Is that accurate to say? Okay.
Yep.
The exercise we just went through would need to be replicated per each menu item, correct? Is a
Yes.
best practice to save each workbook for each different item? It's a good question.
So what we would recommend is creating a new tab. So making a copy of the first tab, the ABCOT tab, because that will preserve the formulas that are used across the rest of the tabs with all of the inputs. And you can then look, or you could compare multiple items within the same file itself instead of having to reference multiple files.
So one workbook.
Yes.
But you do need to do it for each item on your menu.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Let's see if more questions come in. someone had asked a question very early on when it was just about the ingredients around if this duplicates the work of inventory or recipe software. So I think this answered itself as you got to see everything else. But is there, for folks who are using, and I imagine that's a large percentage of people here who are using inventory or recipe software, what's the kind of work that the kind of integration, or is it just using that first and then inputting those numbers into the spreadsheet? Anouska or Matt, if you want to answer that. And yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking the participants.
No, I was asking you all if that's something.
Right. So what I've seen from prior menu costing and inventory software is people come in, they put in their inventory software first, then layer in the menu costing secondly. It's pretty cumbersome. If you're doing that already, what this does is allow you to then, like we said, layer in rent, marketing, insurance, et cetera, because you want to look at your whole P&L, not just the food costing aspect of it, although that is obviously very important. And that starts with everything along with labor and rent. So I would say if you're using that already and you feel comfortable with that, then quickly put that into this model, at least that portion of it, you've already done the work. Put that in and then layer everything else on just to see how your actual overall P&L can look for all of these different criteria.
Thank you. And there's a question, how will you be sharing this Excel with us? Will there be any guidance on how to begin? So Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Excel spreadsheet is live on the website. On the link, I'll put the link again here on the ABC landing page, along with the curriculum, PowerPoint, etc. This video, so guidance to help you find it. So the Institute ABCs of Accounting page there, and Anna, chime in if I gave wrong information. All right, I did not. Anna, go ahead.
No, you did not. I just want to make sure in case we get cut off, I'm going to just share so folks can scan the QR code for our WhatsApp group.
Perfect.
So that is here just in case we get cut off at 3. And
if I could add to Anne's last question, we also there will also be an overview for how to use the tool as well. So there's a document that explains each of the tabs and how to input values for each of those tabs.
Yes.
I'm also putting the link in the chat. Any other questions? And I see 8 requests to join the group chat already. Great.
And we'll be on there as well. So between now and that second set of office hours, if you have questions and you're a little nervous or you want to just get a little confidence that you're doing the things correctly, just feel free to shoot it out there to the WhatsApp group. Everyone can benefit from those questions as well. And if you want to invite other people from your staff who are going to be assisting you with this model to the future office hours as well, that would be very helpful for them, I would imagine as well.
Great. All right. Thank you all so much for participating, and we can't wait to see you all use the tool and see the questions that you have, and hopefully this is really prove a invaluable actually solutions for your restaurants and your businesses, and just making things a little bit easier for you all to control your costs. Isabelle, Matt, and everyone at the University of Michigan who worked on this tool, we could literally not have done this without you, and the fact that you came up with this incredible solution for the industry is also absolutely invaluable. And we're just so grateful to you all. And Anouska, we're so lucky to have you as an internal resource who is also so willing to be sharing your knowledge and your great expertise with everyone. Anna, your diligence and your work through on this for the last year really has just been absolutely invaluable as well. So thank you so very much to you for bringing this up to life. And we will see some of you, I'm sure, next month on the of you in WhatsApp. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and make great use of this tool.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye everyone.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you.